welcome. I see a bunch of people have joined us. I'm going to give it a second to just see if we're good. I'm Professor Heffernan. I'm so glad you guys are here to learn about actually digital platforms. Excellent. Well, I think we got all 21 in. So we're always waiting around on these Zooms. Do we get going? But I'm going to get going. So I'm Professor Neil Heffernan, and welcome to this session on digital platforms. Let me tell you a little bit about the background on actually how this got started. In September, there's a few digital platforms that I knew were interested in trying to help researchers do stuff that were already actually kind of like accepting participants. I run one that I call eTrials that connects to assessments, but Ben here, Ben Motz and Ryan Baker and Renee, as well as Steve Ritter, all have digital platforms of a type that they're interested in helping people run studies. I'm going to let each of them actually kind of describe their own individual platform. Since that time, IES has actually funded 5 digital platforms and a network lead. Jeremy Rochelle is the network lead. And so I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about the general idea. And then you're going to hear from some platforms. I'm going to come back because I'm both a host here because I came up with the idea, but I also have a platform. We were just talking with Aaron Higgins, actually the program officer for the digital platform lead, about what % of actually you out there or the research community writ large are going to be using a digital platform 5 years from now to do your work. Mark Schneider has taken this bet that funding platforms like us actually will help researchers do their job more effectively, more cost effectively. We're going to actually have a little poll question at the end of this, which is like, hey, what % of you think you could do something now? Like, who's ready to actually have a PhD student try out one of these digital platforms to accomplish your work? We also have this question about, like, there's also a negative thing, which is if these digital platforms like us are all funded, are we going to convert the research agenda in a bad way, right? Actually, that, oh, things that actually you can't do well in these platforms, we're going to get people to do all this work in digital platforms, but that's really not what they want to be doing. I'm hoping that actually after this session, you're going to be like, oh, I could see some value in some of these digital platforms to be able to conduct some of your work. But anyways, we're going to come back to that, but I just want to let you all know those are the types of things we're thinking about. So let me like Jeremy to kick it off, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Jeremy.
Thanks, Neil. Jeremy Rochelle. I'm at Digital Promise, which is a nonprofit. And let's talk a little bit about educational research. It's really fast, right? And it doesn't cost very much to do. And once you're done, everyone in the world uses whatever you produce, generalizes everywhere, works for everyone. That's not the research I know. In fact, educational research is really slow and it's really hard, and it often doesn't get put into use even when we have a great finding. And also the cost of doing the research often limits who can do it. And so Liz Albro yesterday had some remarks about, who's in the IES principal investigators funding pool. It's not the demographics we wished. We wish for more diversity in our research community. And so I can't change who I am, but I do want to be more active in this phase of my career in how I welcome, how I support other people and change our community to do more effective research that helps people, research that represents who the United States is. And so there's key issues we have to worry about, like we want research that's relevant to what students are experiencing today. Well, we want research that's applicable. Once we get the lesson, we want to be able to put it into practice for people. Once we get the insight, we want it to be replicable beyond the additional study. We really want to generalize, given all the variety in who students are in the United States and all the settings in which they learn. And then other principles too. SEER in Seernet refers to the SEER principles. And when I get a chance, I'll put the link to the SEER principles into the chat, or maybe someone else will do that. So the intuition behind this program is digital learning platforms are already in large-scale use. They're even in larger scale use given where we are today with the pandemic. And so rather than trying to figure out how to translate research from place A to place B, let's go where the learners are. They're on these platforms, and let's bring the researchers there. Let's open up the platforms to researchers. And when we say researchers, researchers like you, we hope. And we also want to reach out to researchers beyond those who are already attending the IESPI meeting. And so I'll talk more about that in a second. So why relevance? Well, because DLPs, digital learning platforms, are already being used a lot, the work you do can really affect the lives of students. Also, these platforms are super malleable. So if you have an improved approach, it's not too hard to take that and actually implement it for everyone who's using that platform. For example, Neil has this idea that he's always going to have the best existing version of assessments, and people can compete against it. And as soon as they've got one better than the best existing, he's going to replace the best existing. So everyone's always getting the best existing version of assessments. Replicable, well, we're going to hope you pre-register studies. And then when they work, others will see what you did and they can replicate them. And generalization, well, these are used in many different settings in the US. So once you find an insight that works in place A with student group A, B, you can try it in data sets that are larger and that cover other places. But there's a little bit of a problem with generalization, and I'll get to that in a second. So that's basically what I wanted to say by way of interest. What I want to do now is I just want to quickly show you that we have a website. And let me go to that for a second. It's a start of a website for Seernet. Here it is. And it has some of this information. Importantly, we really would love you to sign up for our interest list, because when there's more information, then we'll be able to get it to you quickly. And Seernet will encompass 5 platforms: OpenStax, Carnegie Learning, ASU, and eTrials, maybe someday more. And those will each open up so you can do research that uses and engages those platforms. And they'll be telling you more about what that's like, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details. We're partners, Digital Promise, with Empirical in doing this research. I think Neil put this one, which is the original announcement, into the chat already. If not, I'll put it in later. I'll put this website in as well. And basically, we're going to have more and more resources up here for researchers to tell you what you can do and what you need to go through to do it. And for now, there's this really nice video that has Mark Schneider on it. It has Aaron on it, and it talks about all 5 platforms. And so you might want to watch that after the session if you want to get some more information. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to share on the website. So let me turn screen sharing off. I'm just about ready to wrap up. So sign our interest list. Second, I'm really interested in reaching out to scholars who aren't here today. And I have some ideas, like going to training sessions that they might go to, going to conferences, reaching out directly to HBCUs, MSIs that have PhD programs that would address that do educational research. But I'm not an expert, so I would really love your ideas about how can we reach a more diverse audience of researchers with these possibilities. If you have ideas, send me a note or just type it in the chat, would be great. And third, what I want you to do is keep an eye out for a solicitation that would provide funding to you to do this research. Now, we don't know when IES will release that solicitation, but what I can tell you is we're actively preparing information on the Seernet website to help you write a great proposal. And we'll try to get our information up in April, May, and June. And if you have ideas for doing research, write us. We'd love to hear what you plan to do, what you'd like to do, and what you would need in order to do it. And so now I'm going to turn it back to Neil.
Excellent. I think our next speaker is Ryan and team. Is that right, Ryan?
Sure. Thank you. So exciting to hear about that work, Jeremy. I'm going to ask you some questions about it later. So Renee Kizelchek and I are here to introduce BIRI, the Behavioral Infrastructure Research, the Behavioral Intervention Research Infrastructure. Hopefully one of these days I'll be able to say the actual name of the system I'm helping to develop. So it's an infrastructure for experiments in the Realize It platform, where Realize It is online courseware for undergraduates that's used at a lot of US universities. And we're adding the functionality to be able to do studies in it. Renee?
Thank you, Ryan. It's great to be here and present about BIRI. It really came out of the question of how can we scale intervention research and make it accessible to researchers all around the world. And we have a number of studies that are ongoing right now, and I'll just give you some examples. One of the studies that is ongoing right now is from the Cohen Lab at Stanford. It is a values affirmation intervention designed to support students, especially first-generation students and students with minoritized backgrounds in online courses to do better and to have higher levels of well-being. And so that is currently implemented in a biology course with 600 students. Another intervention that is running is from the Motivation and Self-Regulation Lab at the National University of Singapore. And it's a strategic resource use intervention. So this is teaching students how to monitor the resources that they have available and use them strategically in order to do well on assessments. This intervention is currently deployed in a biology course with 900 students that is offered by the University of Central Florida. And one last one, it's a little different in flavor, is an intervention that is developed from researchers at the University of Manila. And it uses materials to teach students how to do debugging well. We know that debugging is a very hard skill to learn in programming classes, but very important in order to succeed. And so this intervention teaches students some strategies to master debugging. So those are just some examples of interventions on the platform.
One key question is when these kind of interventions should be provided. And Biri not just has functionality to run a study on what intervention to provide, but also when. Part of that involves the student's receptiveness to a message. So we've been working to develop affect detectors, detectors of student emotion, that indicate the student's emotion before the intervention so that researchers can use the affect as part of their when question that they're trying to answer. We're also going to be using affect as a dependent measure on the impacts of the interventions to see, for example, if an intervention is reducing student boredom, increasing their engaged concentration, making them more able to deal with their frustration, along with things like short-term performance and course grades.
That's great. Is your team down, Ryan?
Just one more detail, which we didn't quite coordinate, which is that we welcome researchers to go to our website and fill out an application to conduct a study. We are welcoming researchers and we have capacity. Thank you very much.
I think that's a great point. And I don't think I actually really said it at the beginning, that actually, and for some reason we started with 20 people and we now have 85. So it's worth repeating, which is these three platforms are ready to go, like, because they were already kind of ready to go. But Ryan, your team and Renee have not actually, you weren't funded through IES, but it's great to recognize these aren't the only platforms that are in theory could be doing research. Like, wouldn't it be great if like Pearson's My Math Lab or McGraw-Hill actually, or some of these other platforms were also actually saying, hey, great, we actually want to figure out how to use our platform. So I think in one sense, IES is funding some of these, hoping to kind of demonstrate a value proposition for other digital platform players where they might actually get value from. All right, next up is Steve Ritter.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna share my screen here. Show some slides. Can everybody see that? Okay. So I'm going to talk about, I'm Steve Ritter from Carnegie Learning. I'm going to talk about our platform, which really has two components, Mathia and Upgrade. Mathia is an intelligent tutoring system that's used as part of a complete core curriculum in middle and high school mathematics by over 600,000 students a year. And what happens is students typically will use Mathia 2 days a week as part of their math class. We provide them with complex multi-step problems to solve, and we essentially watch students as they solve those problems, trying to understand the student strategies and build a model of the student's knowledge that we use to adapt instruction to each student. We use mastery learning within Mathia so students can proceed at their own pace, and we monitor student knowledge at a fine-grained level that we call knowledge components. And so you can see here, this is a typical type of activity where we're giving a fraction manipulative to teach fraction addition, give some understanding of how students' intuitive knowledge about quantities can relate to the standard fraction algorithm. And students are given immediate feedback as they work through problems like that. We were the subject of a large-scale evaluation by the RAND Corporation and sponsored by IES a number of years ago, which showed that in the second cohort using our curriculum, students nearly doubled their growth in math knowledge as compared to the control group. So we have some solid evidence of effectiveness. But we always are trying to improve our effectiveness. And one question you might ask about that fraction bar model that I showed is whether there's a better fraction bar model that we might be able to use that would actually help students even more. And so that's the point of what we're doing with Upgrade. So Upgrade is a free and open source infrastructure for conducting experiments, or what would often be called A/B tests in educational software. It works with Mathia, and we're trying to and are engaging with researchers about experiments in Mathia, but it's also important to understand that Upgrade can run independently with any application. And we've customized Upgrade to help with particular issues that come up in education, including group random assignment. So if you are going to introduce a new method to teach fractions, you might want to randomly assign that method by class or by school, maybe, instead of by individual student. And then we're also dealing with issues that happen particularly in adaptive software, of thinking about when the software is delivered versus when the experiment starts, so that we can support experiments starting at any time during the school year, even if students are going at their own pace through the curriculum. So I'm going to show a really quick live demo. This is really risky, of Upgrade, working with an application that's not Mathia. It's an application that we built to demonstrate Upgrade. So what you're looking at here is a website that embeds both Upgrade and a student-facing app, which we call the quiz app, which is a very simple math application. You can see I just logged in as a student. And now I'm asked a question about the area of this square. I'm going to type in my answer. And the way we've constructed the app is we have 3 simple geometry questions. So that's the way the app works without an experiment going on. But now I can go to Upgrade and log into Upgrade. So this is a full live working version of Upgrade, which is the system that manages the experiment. And for this demo purpose, what I'm going to do is just import an existing experimental design into Upgrade. And so you can see now Upgrade has this experiment that we call concrete or abstract. And if I click on that experiment, you'll see that the experiment's currently inactive. In other words, it's not running, but it will interact with that quiz app application. We've chosen to assign individually, so each individual student will be randomly assigned to condition. And there are a number of other parameters that control the experiment. You can see here the experiment has 2 conditions, one called concrete and one called abstract. I'm now going to change the status to enrolling, meaning we are starting to enroll students in the experiment. I'm going to go back to the quiz app, and I'm going to log into the quiz app as a different student. And you can see one thing has changed. Oh, I'm really glad this happened, because there are 2 conditions. What you saw in the default version of quiz app was a plain square, and now you see a napkin. So the concrete condition shows images within those geometric shapes instead of the abstract geometric shapes. So fortunately, I at least got one student who is assigned to the concrete condition. And within this demo, I'm going to collect data from 3 students. So I'm going to act as 3 students. Look, this second student also has the concrete condition. Hopefully the third one will be different, as you can see abstract. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Good. Okay, so we've got two students in the concrete condition, one in the abstract condition. I just ran through that quiz app for each of those students. And now I'm going to go back to upgrade, which is managing an experiment. You can see here's the experiment here. The status is enrolling. I can click there and you'll see the assignment weight of 50-50. You'll see that it correctly reports that I've enrolled 3 students, 2 of them in the concrete condition, 1 in the abstract condition. And I can look at metrics. In this case, we've decided to monitor 2 metrics, duration, so the amount of time that students take within the app, and also percent correct. Turns out we're exactly even between the 2 conditions on percent correct. So that's just a really quick view of how Upgrade works. And again, like Upgrade is a service that can run with any application.
That is cool. I appreciate you doing a live demo. That's fun.
It was scary, but it worked.
All right, I'm going to try in 6 minutes to actually just say a little bit about my platform. So I'm going to share the screen. And so, all right, so I guess I'm best known for...
Thank you.
Oh, hold on. Did I hear someone actually in the background? Okay, so maybe they are muted now. All right, so I'm best known for assessments. This is something my wife and I created, and is also, like Steve Ritter actually just pointed out, actually survived a well-designed What Works Clearinghouse kind of review. And so I could say good things about assessments, but I'm not. I want to tell you how I actually want to let you experiment with ideas of your own inside assessments. So most of our users are elementary, middle school, and high school, but huge number of elementary. We had, during the pandemic, we had like 500,000 actually students. We still have well over 300,000 actually students after the pandemic. But oh, I clicked that a little fast. Most of our users come in and they're using, say, Illustrative Mathematics, Engage New York, Utah Math. And so if a teacher comes and says, I'm doing Engage New York, and I'm doing, say, 6th grade, and I don't know, let's say they're doing actually module 1, and they find one of their things they want to do, what you'll see is these are the actual problems from the curriculum. Write a ratio of the following description, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and we wind up experimenting with actually different ways of helping a child respond to that. I pulled up 2 things so we wouldn't actually have to see get randomized to the same condition multiple times. Here's one response, some text about actually explain this ratio here. Here's another one, which is some video explanation that some teacher actually wrote.
So you know that Khalil made 3 times as much.
I'm not going to play it, but the main idea is, so we are experimenting with different ways of giving kids actually feedback. And so that's one of the main ways we're moving forward. How do you propose such a study? Okay, that we call e-trials. E-trials actually, and I'll drop these links in the chat actually when I'm done, but e-trials is the name for where you come to actually find stuff. And so you can come and learn how to build a study. I'll actually demonstrate, I'm super proud of the fact that we've already helped 11 actually people get their studies published. Emily Fife was the first one back in 2016, and she had an idea about actually types of feedback. My name's not on the study actually, but it never would have happened if we actually didn't actually chime in. I'm excited to be a midwife to all sorts of different science. I also want to say that if you participate with us, we have made our IRB actually situation really good. You sign, you still get your own IRB actually to approve this stuff, but you will find working with our IRB really easy. I also want to say that all of your data will actually become public. We're very big into the open science stuff. So I come back to featured works. I just want to say that I know of XX, I know it's over 50. If I go here, you're going to go to figure out, okay, here are the publicly available data sets. And in this case, that become public. I have yet to see anyone's individual study become one of the more popular studies to actually analyze, but there's a data set that we released in 2009 that I know there's 21 papers that have actually used it. So the data becomes public as well. So you can come here and learn about actually how do you conduct a study and then eventually disseminate it. But I've helped a bunch of researchers say, hey, I want to study X. Now, you might think at the moment, your research idea can't actually be put into the place of actually comparing two hints. But this is where we actually get into the issue of it's really important for platform providers like myself to actually the platform should get better as part of this research too. So the grant that we actually submitted to IES was all about putting into place an infrastructure such that actually your study also always is competing against the best so far condition. So I showed you two different hint messages for these problems, but if we already have a good hint message that is actually doing really well, and an experimenter comes and says, I want to run this other study, we want that study to run in parallel with our current study. You might not care about our current hint messages. That's okay with me. As long as they are better than what we have, then I hope actually they will become the new best so far. So I'm trying to figure out how to actually make it really easy for us to see that actually our platform is getting better at the same time as actually helping a researcher propose a study. If your study actually, if both of your conditions lose to our best so far, then we'll say, thanks for playing. We're going back to what we already had. And who's next to actually try to actually figure out how best to actually help a child on problem 1 in module 1 in 6th grade. Turns out we have thousands of these problems. Anyways, I think I'll stop there. We are now in the part of actually our session where we've all just said something about our platforms. And we basically want to actually make a little bit of a free-flowing actually conversation between all of this.
Wait, Neil, do you not want to see my video?
Oh, hold on. Did we miss you? Oh,
okay. I mean,
I did.
Quietly over here.
Ben, thank you so much. Hold on. So Ben Motz is a killer researcher, and he's actually built a really cool platform. And I somehow actually jumped the gun because you were supposed to go next. But Ben, take it away.
It's cool. And yeah, I feel privileged just to be here. So yeah, I should say I run a platform called Terracotta, which right now is an add-in to the Canvas learning management system. My co-PI on this IES grant is Mark McDaniel at Washington University, St. Louis. And I'm also collaborating with Jared Stein, who's the Vice President of Higher Education Strategy at Instructure, the company that makes Canvas. And as I mentioned when I interjected, I've got a video. So let me go ahead and share it. Here we go.
Oh, hey, did someone say they wanted to run an experiment on student learning? Well, I've got just the thing for you, Terracotta. Terracotta makes it possible for teachers and researchers to experimentally manipulate student learning activities in the Canvas learning management system. For example, with Terracotta, you can create 2 different versions of the same assignment in Canvas and randomly assign students to receive either version. Maybe you're interested to try out a value affirmation intervention where some students write about their personal values while other students complete a routine practice quiz. Or maybe you're interested to explore how the order of questions in these routine practice quizzes affects student performance. Or maybe you're interested for some students to watch one video and other students to watch another. Terracotta streamlines the process of setting up these kinds of experiments and many more, making it easy to embed rigorous research studies within the environment where most learning is currently taking place, Canvas. Terracotta is an open source add-in to the Canvas learning management system designed and managed at Indiana University. We use the latest learning tool interoperability standard, LTI version 1.3, to integrate with the LMS so that from the student's perspective, experimentally manipulated assignments appear just like any other Canvas assignment with standard due dates and points and with grades automatically passed back to the Canvas gradebook. But Terracotta doesn't only make it easy to run experiments, Terracotta makes it easy to run experiments responsibly. You can build an informed consent workflow in Terracotta, making it possible for students to volunteer to participate in an experiment by responding anonymously to a Canvas assignment. Or in K-12 settings, teachers can manually mark which students have returned parental permission slips. When the experiment's complete, Terracotta exports a de-identified data set containing all study data and excludes students who didn't volunteer to participate. What makes Terracotta special is that it enables rigorous experimental research, not just on digital learning materials, but on instructional practices using those materials, spanning education levels, student populations, and curricular domains. To learn more, come visit terracotta.education.
I'll put those links in chat just the same. And yeah, so right now Terracotta also is currently functional and live, and it's available to institutions that want to integrate it with their learning management system with Canvas so that people could start running studies on the students who are in those institutions. Okay.
Hey, Ben, let me push you actually just say a little bit more because you've just spent the least amount of time of all of us. But I just dropped in the chat that I didn't drop in the chat the many classes study. I'm going to do that right now. I just referred to it. I just sent this exact same link back to assessments. But actually, you've done the coolest pre-registered study I've ever seen on actually feedback. And you use this platform. So how does it relate to this? Can other people join that study, or today, are you mostly interested in getting other people to put this into their own platform? How's that work?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to many classes that Aaron just put into chat. And
thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, the idea for Terracotta came from the difficulty of implementing many classes. Many classes was a research study that tried to do what Jeremy started with, this idea that what's unfortunate in education research is that research is usually only done on the populations where the people who are privileged to be able to get research funding happen to work. So, like large R1 institutions. And we wanted to be able to distribute research in a far broader sample. With many classes, we implemented the same intervention on feedback across many different class contexts. We didn't have Terracotta when we first set out to do many classes, so we did it all manually. We had a genius, a hero of a graduate research assistant who was in each individual class setting up experiments manually, and people who are in this Zoom session know that implementing a controlled experiment by yourself, even in an out-of-the-box digital learning platform, is hard. So this was a full-time job for many months. And we just realized that if this is something that we were going to do, if we were going to be principled about doing research and distributing it across large, diverse samples, we needed a tool that would make it more streamlined. So Terracotta was born out of the necessity of we've got to get a tool to make this easier if we're going to be running large-scale research in heterogeneous contexts.
I think that's really cool. One thing I want to say before I forget is actually the three platform providers, Steve Ritter, actually Ben, and myself, are currently funded by IES on this digital platform thing, in case you missed it at the beginning. But there's two other platforms, actually. Daniel McNamara's at ASU and Richard Baranak's actually OpenStack's platform at OpenStack's, that will be coming online, as Jeremy alluded to, that there will probably be an RFP at some point. Jeremy, you want to add to that?
I just want to suggest that maybe it's a bit of a movement here, because we have Ryan here too, and there are others. And the movement is to let's open up platforms so research can happen there. And different platforms offer students different things, and we want to study them all. But let's bring the research to where the learners are, rather than trying to figure out later how we're going to translate this stuff into practice.
Wouldn't it be great if we have good.
Oh, no, please, Ryan.
Wouldn't it be great if we have a world where anybody in the world who has a great idea can go and find the platform that fits their idea? And we get away from this world where we have all these platforms where there's just a small number of people who are inside the golden circle that can do research on them. And so ideas don't bubble up from that much broader range of people who have fantastic ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually, let me throw one question out there, because I bet some people are wondering about IRB stuff. I kind of waved my hand and said, oh, it's really easy when you're doing a study at eTrials. You've done something at the higher ed level that I've never seen anyone do, which is allow participants to sign IRB forms and have professors not know who's signed and who hasn't signed. And I just thought, do you want to just talk about that for a second? Because you built a very interesting infrastructure.
Yeah, one of the difficulties with Terracotta is that, as I said before, integration is up to an institution. And depending on your institution, some are very sensitive about things like the particulars of student agency in their unique IRB. So we knew it would be necessary to allow students to provide consent to participate in the study. And if somebody didn't provide consent, then they would be excluded from data exports. So yeah, we built this into Terracotta. And the way that it works is when a student provides consent, what they're doing is they're responding to an assignment in the learning management system, which is ungraded, or I should say it can be graded. It just doesn't matter what students' responses are, they get credit either way. And that would open up Terracotta's ability to randomly assign them to different conditions and include them in data exports. So the idea is that we wouldn't exclude students from a learning opportunity, but we would exclude students from the randomization to a random condition of that learning opportunity. They would be kind of diverted to just default treatment, like what Neil was saying before, maybe what is business as usual or best so far. And if you instead volunteer for some more unique treatment, then that's something that you have agency in as a student. Yeah. And that also is something that can extend beyond just like the assignment in Terracotta. This is something that, you know, if you're doing research in K-12, you understand sometimes you might need to send home parental permission slips. So there also is a feature in Terracotta where a teacher could manually, you know, check boxes of who's given back the parental permission slips so that only those students get the random treatment.
I do know that actually in my world, I have IRB permission to actually do stuff that is only normal instructional practice. So if your hint message is meant to help a child actually solve this problem, I think people can understand that looks like normal instructional practice. But if you want to do something that is different, particularly surveying and whatnot, because these platforms could also be used for measurement actually sort of work, which I kind of sometimes gloss over when we're just thinking about intervention work. But anyways, I thought I'd say something about that. Renee, you were going to say something about IRB too.
Yeah, I can add a little bit about the experience here. At Cornell, we got the IRB to look at the BERI project and recognize the value of it and recognize the importance of making it easy for other researchers to go through this process, right? It can really be a showstopper to have a complicated IRB process for making this a good experience for researchers around the world. And so the IRB, just like you said, Neil, recognized that all of these interventions will be part of normal instructional practice. They're all there to help students do better in the courses that are there. And so all we need to do is submit to them on a semesterly basis the designs of the interventions and any additional questions that researchers are asking so that they can just put it as part of their protocol that is an umbrella protocol. And other researchers can defer to Cornell's IRB for the review that was conducted here. And so that really speeds up the process and simplifies it under the assumption that all of the work that is done really falls under the bucket of, under the umbrella of normal instructional practice.
That's great. Is it the case? Is it the case that actually Ben and Steve, are we all using the normal instructional practice or exemption? Or Ben, is that what you guys are doing? No.
Yeah, in a sense, the sky is the limit in Terracotta. So it's possible for a manipulation to be outside the realm of normal instructional practice, which is part of the reason that we'd like this concept of including informed consent. I mean, I don't want to suggest that anybody could do it, but it's possible that maybe like exercise is something that somebody would want to try to implement. And instructions to go out and exercise could be instructions in a digital platform. So yeah, we wanted to have the flexibility for people to do whatever they could put into an assignment, even if it's not what would be routine. Yep.
And I'd say the same thing for what we're doing with Matthew and Upgrade is, you know, we're planning some experiments that do surveys that are outside of normal instructional practice, and we've gone through the IRBs with the institutions who are doing those studies. So it's not necessarily limited to things that would fall under normal instructional practice.
Well, let's take some questions actually from the room. I think I saw a question from John Whitmer. John, did you want to just unmute yourself and ask a question?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, and thanks everybody. This is exciting work, and it really is the start of a movement. It's really neat that have us who've been fake borrowing and stealing to get access to platforms have that funded research. So yeah, it feels like a really neat moment. I'll stop opining though. And the question I had was about IRBs are exception question, or do you depend on the study that you're
I think John is getting.
doing if you're seeking to have the exemption?
Gotcha, John. Let's get you to ask that question, John. You're coming across actually bad. Let's get that, write that question, put that in the chat. We're going to get to it in a second once you've written that down, but I don't think we heard the whole thing.
And Neil, why don't we voice Gina's question, which is about assessment? She says she has a computer-based, web-based assessment. Can you nest that in one of these systems? And I know for some of the systems, that's definitely true. That's the idea, is that you could include it as a survey, for example, that you want to give to the students. So maybe we can hear a quick round of how that works.
Yeah, that's something that we've thought about a lot within Upgrade. And the way we think about it, there's kind of two ways to embed these assessments, particularly in self-paced systems. Sometimes you want the assessment aligned with the content. So when the student finishes a particular module, you want to maybe do a pre and a post test around that module. And so that assessment will happen at different times for different students. Sometimes you want to lock that assessment to time. So it might be the assessment that you give at the end of the school year. And we have plans to support both types of those assessments for these purposes. Yeah.
How about actually Ryan's team? Actually, how's that work for you guys?
Hey, do you want to?
Sorry, I was just looking something up in response to Danielle's question. So why don't you take it?
That is actually, so, okay, Ben is ready. Go ahead, Ben.
I think Gina's question is good, and at least as far as Terracotta is concerned, it depends. So yeah, Terracotta makes it possible to manipulate things that are plugged into Canvas outside of Terracotta. So it makes it easy to differentiate assignments that might be like their own learning tool and interoperability plugins. But in the future, this is not like, I don't want to profess that it's available today, but in the future, we would like for any assessment to be able to be implemented as an assignment in Terracotta so that you can also record click streams from there and have it integrated with the export. That would require you to create some sort of a JavaScript object that would have an iframe built in so that it's directing to your thing. So we'll have an API for that, but it's probably about 2 years from now.
Yeah.
And I will.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I will kind of respond, which is that in Beery, the main goal is not to embed that kind of alternative activity. So realize that I think can do that sort of thing. It hasn't been what we've really focused on.
Right. Is it fair to say that you guys actually grab a few professor types and actually get them to run a study themselves inside that platform? Whereas like, I already have like all these users and then I'm bringing random researchers to bear. Are you on that same model or different?
So
it doesn't have to be a professor. Oh, go ahead, Ritter.
We have a matching process for both sides in the marketplace, really. We have a form that's online on the website for researchers who want to propose ideas and tell us a little bit about what they're looking for in terms of the population, the type of course, the type of intervention. And then we have a similar form, much shorter though, for instructors or institutions that are already signed up with Realize It. And so they're already using these adaptive courses in their college environments, either completely online or in a hybrid format, a little bit like Canvas, but more adaptive. And so we then do a matchmaking process where we find courses that fit the requirements of researchers. And if there's more than one, then we can deploy the same intervention in multiple courses and look at consistency, replicability of the effects across them as well.
So I just wanted to jump in here and explain a little bit about the role of Seernet, because as you can see, what's emerging is researchers have questions and then different platforms have different answers. And so there's a matrix of questions researchers have and answers platforms have. And wouldn't it be great if there's one place you could go and get that kind of information so that if you do want to insert an assessment or conduct a certain kind of manipulation, you know which platforms would support it. And that's part of what Seernet's going to do, is bring together the information and the people in a consistent form.
I'm wondering, actually, I want to get you guys talking about several years from now, what is the use of platforms going to look like in the educational research community? Like, I want to come back to this question. Is like, Are 4% of people actually at IES actually going to be using platforms? At the moment, it's probably something like that. I mean, there's 1 or 2 people that actually know someone at Khan Academy or Pearson or whatever that have pulled off a study. Like, what do you guys think is the future? Like, let me start with Steve, and then I'll go to Renee, and then Ben, and back to Jeremy.
Yeah, so the way I think about it, I really resonated. John had a comment earlier about sort of driving the marketplace towards valuing systems that are willing to open themselves up to this kind of experimentation. And that's fundamentally been like, that's been our incentive for doing this. Is part of our our approach is to say that we're continuously improving. We don't have all the answers, and the way you improve is by doing careful field studies and understanding what works and changing, just like you were saying with e-trials, like always put the best stuff out there. And so I think that's what ends up driving this, is that commitment to continuous improvement.
Wouldn't that be cool if actually our platforms were like that actually in the United States? Renee, what are your thoughts?
The partnership with Realize It came about a little randomly. I was talking to the chief scientist over drinks at a reception after some event at Stanford, and he mentioned that he would love to do something with more experimentation. And so Ryan and I, fast forward several years, pitched him the idea of BERI, and they were on board because they realized that being able to say that the way that the courses are structured is based on research and being at the forefront of research in higher education is something that helps them as a small but growing platform. And so there was clearly a win-win there. And while there's nothing specific about BERI that requires it to be on Realize It, it was a very good partner platform to get started with the project.
Yeah, and I want to think a little bit about not just the platforms, but the school districts. The school districts, we have a lot of contact with school districts as part of Digital Promise, and they're investing a lot in these educational platforms. And they really want to know, like, what's working, what's not working, how can I use them better, what are best practices? And so I'll just spin a quick scenario, and maybe it works, Ben, but suppose, and you can tell me if I'm way off, but suppose a district says, hey, we're going to rewrite a lot of our assignments to students to be more culturally responsive. But I want to know, like, it's a lot of work to have the teachers rewrite all those assignments. Are the rewritten ones leading to better student learning than the ones that we used to use last year? And so they decide to use Terracotta and Canvas to do that little bit of research, see if their investment in rewriting assignments is paying off. And I think that's the kind of thing we want to enable. That's research districts really care about. And so I also want to make a pitch for researcher practitioner partnerships, that those would be great things to pick up these platforms, find out what districts most care about, what are the problems of practice they are most centrally concerned about with the platforms their kids are using, and see if you can engage in studies to help those districts improve around those platforms. I'd be super excited to see a shift towards that kind of research that really makes a difference for the resources that schools are expending to try to improve.
I think there's a really interesting mind shift that would happen once that gets going, in that I think a lot of people who are outside of the research community feel like, I know this is going to work, I don't need to test it, right? And everyone who's in the research community has had the feeling of having great ideas that don't actually work out in real life, right? And having that experience go around sells the value of doing this kind of rigorous research.
Good. Ben's dropping a poll in here, because actually, thank you, Catherine, for playing along, and Jen on a thumb up on actually, could you see yourself doing actually research? I'm going to reproduce this poll 5 years from now, and I wonder if it will go up. But Ben's dropping a poll in there, and Ben, say something about that.
Hoping that my screen isn't covering it up. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if anybody says disagree or strongly disagree. I'd be fascinated to find out what we're coming up short on, because we're at such a neat infancy in these platforms that we might be able to actually fix things. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And I also want to kind of give Jeremy a fist bump. I think that it's actually the case that everybody's experimenting all the time. Every teacher, when they do stuff, they're experimenting. And our goals here is not to like insist that people do brand new things, instead to give tools so that if somebody was interested in rigorously studying the effect of an instructional change or instructional intervention or instructional innovation, then we could actually collect better data on it. Again, better data, and we can democratize the research so that the data is representative of a broader sample of learners. This was pretty encouraging. I don't know if you're just telling us what we want to hear.
Okay, what are the results, Ben? Do you want to share your screen for a second or something?
Wait, you can't see the screen right now?
I hit strongly agree, but I almost didn't want to actually screw with your poll. Okay, we're not a random sample. You're right, Gina. Okay, so all right, I don't know, but okay. So here, let's say, all right, let's talk practically. What are the things the platforms are never going to do well? What are the obvious ones? Because it feels like I'm such a booster of platforms, but come on, one of us say, what's something we're never going to ask that these platforms are never going to be useful for?
You know, Neil, I think some of the challenges, or maybe never, I don't want to say never, but push the boundaries of, platforms sometimes are, you can think of them as delivering something to kids individually. What about things that really support groups of kids? Is that something we're going to be able to study? What about classroom discourse? That's not happening on the platform, it's happening in the air. So I don't want to never say never. It's just like, we have to start somewhere. We have to build a movement here. We have to show the value that when we do the research this way, it's doing what we want. It's helping move the concerns we have about equity faster and further than when we do research other ways. And so we have to do that with, the low-hanging fruit in a way. And then let's work on bringing the other educational phenomena into the sphere of this.
Right, and thank you so much for trying to bring up actually something like actually classroom discourse, or I was kind of thinking about like classroom discipline sort of stuff, where the intervention is not actually on the platform at all, right? Actually, would these platforms be useful in such a case, Jeremy?
I can think of examples where you may want to, for example, there's some really nice RPP work that uses student exit tickets. The exit ticket could be on the platform. So it's a quick way to gather stuff. If kids are using Canvas, let's say, to anyway, for their assignments, that you could be just gathering those exit tickets. But the actual, what's different is between the teacher and the kids. And you're just getting students, when they use a science kit, let's say, and you've given out different kinds of science kits to different classrooms. How are kids responding to the science kits? Maybe that's the only role of the platform, is to get that exit ticket.
Cool. Hey, let me get you, Danielle in here. Actually, Danielle is running one of the platforms that already got mentioned, actually, that's being funded. Danielle, go ahead.
Hey, thanks everyone. Great to see everyone. It's been a great session. Happy to sit in on it. I popped in because John challenged me to explain my answer to his comment where I just said no. So in my context, I have different hats on. One is in the ASU platform, which is this large beast, and trying to put together all of the data from ASU and make it possible to run experiments using all of these other platforms at ASU as various and implement various ideas. And then another aspect is I have iStart and Writing Pal, which of themselves are platforms that were really constructed to run experiments. So they're available for teachers and for experimenters to run experiments because they can be changed, manipulated to provide different things in different ways. What John said was, oh, we won't be able to do exploratory research. And I was like, well, do exploratory ideas, and that's kind of largely what has occupied my career, are really in essence exploratory ideas, and that's kind of what an A/B experiment is. And so I guess I'd want to know how do you define exploratory? Because when we're testing various hypotheses and we're doing both qualitative and quantitative work on these platforms, and looking at individual differences and how the effects of different interventions depend on individual differences, I view that as exploratory. So I guess maybe I should say, what do you mean by, why can't we do exploratory research on digital learning platforms, before I just say disagree?
Who on the panel wants to respond to that? I will say something.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay, hold on. Go ahead. Who's going to say something?
I was just going to say that I think there's different ways of thinking about exploratory. I guess one way to think about it is as design-based research. And I think there's some great examples out there, for instance, in the domain of mindset interventions, for using design-based research methods to understand how best to deploy mindset messages, how to craft them. And there's some nice studies on that out there that really went in, in a very exploratory mindset, looking at mindset about mindset. It's a meta mindset, I guess, to look at what ways might resonate most with students, and then to try those out rather than to take what is already there and established, right? So the classic version, and test it against something else. Perhaps that is one of the dimensions of making it more exploratory in how you create the treatments that are being tested.
And let me actually say one thing that actually, I kind of asked Jeremy a question about like a second ago, where I was like, are these platforms useful only for interventions? And I just want to, I'll just answer this question myself, which is I could imagine these platforms being very useful for intervention. The interventions are not in the platform themselves, right? But if you're trying to teach teachers how to do formative assessment or whatnot, or classroom management or whatnot, our measures could be coming from, I don't know, Ryan Baker's actually embedded affect detectors inside assessments. So we're basically measuring on your homework, actually, are you more likely to be bored or not? Actually, according to Ryan Baker's detectors running inside assessments, or you could just use more pedantic, standard, knowledge estimates. First quarter grades, if you were talking about using Infinite Campus, we're actually involved in this, or one of these school information systems. So I just want to point out that you don't have to care about interventions delivered by platforms if the platforms can provide useful data to help you do your stuff. I recognize we have 2 minutes extra remaining. Let me come to Jeremy. Jeremy, what does all this mean? Can you bring us home?
On the spot, sure enough. Yeah. I mean, it is a transition moment, I think, where we have so many platforms interested in opening them up to research. I think what we want the people at this session to do is sign up for our interest list so we can get you more information, make you part of the community. I think we want you to, share your ideas and be part of the community. And really, very importantly, help us expand the community, because as many of us have talked, this is about opening up research broadly and to people who aren't necessarily funded by IES as well. So really thinking about those things would be just terrific. It's at the beginning of something. We know there are going to be more funders opening up more platforms. It's not just IES. We've heard there's a lot of interest at the National Science Foundation for interest. And we've seen the Schmidt Futures be very interested and supportive. We've seen the Gates Foundation be very supportive. So something's happening here. Get involved, pay attention, and love to work with you.
I think that's a great way of concluding. And let me just make one final remark, which is I'm super excited. When I started doing eTrials, this work, I was excited to try to help kind of more established researchers go run the study. The Emily Fife study was by a PhD, her advisor, Bethany Riddle Johnson, was already funded by IES. But as I do this work more, I recognize there's 1,700 institutions in America, colleges and universities that all teach a math methods class, teach elementary, middle school math teachers to do stuff. If we could get them actually saying, here's how I actually help kids on these problems, that could be, why don't I have 1,000 actually such people actually saying, I think I know how to do this. Anyways, that's my big hope and dream. Let me actually just say thank you all for coming to our session. I very much appreciate it. And sign up on Jeremy's list. I think we'll all get told about your interest, and hopefully you can find a platform for you. Thanks so much.
And a word of thanks to our funder, Erin Higgins, who's been very quietly cheering on, I'm pretty sure, from the sidelines, but you could also talk to Erin at any moment about this. I'm sure she would love to hear your thoughts and questions as well as we would. Hey, there's Erin.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy. And thanks for a great session, everybody.
Thanks. I'll do what I do in class, which is I will stand here at the podium, but I think that if class is over.
Class is dismissed.
I'll go teach my class now.
Thank you,
Yeah, I have
everyone.
something like that too.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
I wish we could all like get up and leave, but I think we're all just going to sit here and continue to sit here for. All right. Thank you all.